Imagine waking up tomorrow and your GPS no longer works. Your phone can't sync. The internet slows to a crawl. What if I told you that might not be a tech glitch, but the beginning of a war in space? Recently, US intelligence raised a red flag. Russia may have deployed a prototype of a space-based nuclear weapon not to target Earth, but to target other satellites. This revelation sent shockwaves through strategic communities, because in modern warfare, space isn't just the high ground, it's critical infrastructure. Without satellites, armies lose coordination, civilians lose navigation, financial systems lose time synchronization. Space isn't just about exploration anymore, it's about power projection. What do we know? Russia's satellite entered an orbital region high in radiation, typically avoided by standard missions. The design suggests it could carry a nuclear-powered EMP device. If true, one detonation could wipe out entire constellations of satellites, military, civilian, global, in a single silent burst. This wouldn't just cut off GPS. It could blind missile detection systems, shut down internet relays, and even disrupt global banking networks. Why place it there? High radiation zones are hazardous, but that's the point. They're less monitored, less crowded, and more difficult to reach. A perfect hiding spot. But more importantly, it's a test bed for what comes next. Could a nuclear burst in space be the ultimate first strike? Because in modern warfare, controlling the skies means controlling the battlefield, and now, the skies extend far beyond our atmosphere. Strategic implications. Let's take a step back. In the wars of tomorrow, the battlefield won't start in trenches, or on aircraft carriers, or even with jets in the sky. It might start up here in the silent, invisible war zone of space. Why? Because space is where modern warfare breathes. Satellites don't just float aimlessly above us. They guide missiles with surgical precision. They relay military communications across continents in milliseconds. They track every move from a tank rolling through a forest to a drone over a desert. And more than that, they regulate the heartbeat of global finance, syncing stock markets, managing GPS systems, even ensuring your credit card works. Now imagine this, all of that gone in an instant. Launch codes delayed, enemy commands misrouted, submarines left blind beneath the oceans, and in cities across the globe, a digital darkness spreads. No GPS, no ATMs, no internet, no communications. Panic, confusion, silence. But here's the kicker. A nuclear blast in space doesn't leave radioactive dust. It doesn't poison rivers or turn farmland to wasteland. There's no mushroom cloud. It's clean, invisible, silent, but catastrophic. That high-altitude detonation releases an electromagnetic pulse, an EMP, that fries electronics in orbit. Thousands of satellites, military, civilian, and economic, turned into useless scrap in seconds. And here's the terrifying truth. The side that strikes first may not need to fight at all. Because in space, if you control the orbit, you control the Earth. The next world war may begin without a single bullet fired on land. It may start with a flicker in the stars. The geopolitical backdrop. After the launch, the US and Japan rushed to the UN Security Council to propose a ban on nuclear weapons in orbit. Most countries agreed. China abstained. Russia vetoed. Officially, Russia says it supports peace in space. President Putin dismissed allegations as Western hysteria, but actions speak louder. And this could be by design, strategic ambiguity. Say just enough to confuse, but not enough to confirm. It's a Cold War-era tactic. Back in play, in orbit. Space law versus space power. Let's talk about law, specifically space law. Back in 1967, in the middle of the Cold War, a group of nations came together and signed the Outer Space Treaty. It was a historic moment, the first real attempt to bring some order to the final frontier. The treaty banned nuclear weapons in space, declared that space was for peaceful purposes only, and said that no nation could claim territory beyond Earth. Sounds noble, right? But here's the problem. That treaty was written when the most advanced satellite could barely transmit TV signals. Before Starlink, hypersonic missiles, orbital drones, or killer satellites were even imagined. It was an agreement made for a different world in a different space. And today, it's vague, weakly enforced, with no real punishment mechanism. There's no space police flying around to issue violations. And while the treaty technically bans the placement of weapons of mass destruction in orbit, it says nothing about conventional weapons. Nothing about autonomous AI space drones. Nothing about a satellite that could disable another satellite with a well-aimed burst of radiation. And Russia knows it. Russia, already a space superpower, may now be testing the outer limits of that treaty, not necessarily crossing the line, but walking right up to it, deploying satellites that might have dual-use capabilities, launching payloads that could be something more, using just enough ambiguity to avoid direct accusations, but sending a message loud and clear to those watching closely. Because in space, perception is power. And here's why that matters. Once a nation claims the high ground of orbit, truly claims it, the balance of power on Earth changes forever. Imagine a country that can surveil, disrupt, or disable the entire digital infrastructure of another nation from above. A nation that can deploy anti-satellite weapons before anyone even notices they're in orbit. A nation that controls the global communications grid by targeting the satellites we rely on every second of every day. Space law says that can't happen. But space power says, watch me. This isn't just about treaties anymore. It's about dominance. And in a world where satellites control everything from GPS to banking to national defense, whoever controls space controls Earth. So the real question is, are we entering a new Cold War, but this time above the clouds? Let me know what you think. Is Russia breaking the rules or just proving how outdated they've become? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget, space isn't just the final frontier, it might be the next battlefield. Hypothetical scenarios. Let's explore what could happen next. Scenario 1. Escalation. The US accelerates its own orbital defense systems. Space becomes a militarized zone. Armed satellites, hunter-killer drones, anti-satellite lasers. Tensions spike. A space arms race begins. Scenario 2. Diplomatic freeze. Nations pull out of joint missions. The ISS partnership crumbles. Civilian and scientific missions decline. Space becomes fragmented, a mirror of Earth's geopolitical divides. Scenario 3. A new treaty. Public pressure and global risks force a diplomatic breakthrough. A new space treaty is drafted. Strict monitoring, AI surveillance of orbits, real consequences for violations. Maybe, just maybe, a new path to peace. The bigger picture, this isn't just about one satellite. This is about the future of humanity. Will space become the next battlefield? Or can it remain a sanctuary for science and discovery? We stand at a crossroads. Because if the final frontier becomes weaponized, the consequences won't just be military, they'll be existential. What happens to global trust? To internet systems? To climate monitoring satellites? To the dreams of Mars and beyond? The new Cold War above us. In 1957, the USSR shocked the world by launching Sputnik. In 2024, they may have just shocked it again. The question now isn't just about Russia's satellite, it's about what the world does next. Is this the beginning of a new Cold War? In space? Why does this matter? This isn't just about satellites floating in the void. Our lives, banking, farming, flights, phone calls rely on space more than most realize. If space becomes a war zone, the ripple effects hit Earth instantly. And the damage wouldn't just be military, it would be economic, societal, even psychological. Space was once the final frontier, a symbol of unity, exploration, wonder. But now it risks becoming the front line of conflict. The decisions made in the next few years by nations, by leaders, by us could determine whether space remains a domain of peace or becomes the next battlefield. Stay informed, stay curious, and always look up. Drop your thoughts in the comments. Like, subscribe and share if you think space should remain a place for peace, and stay tuned, because the sky is no longer the limit.